most of my writing and thinking. So, as I continued my recovery, I would set off along a path, with or without a dog, and as I walked, ideas would bubble up. Sometimes I would find myself reflecting on something I had written earlier in the morning. I still don't know how it happens, but somehow the walk helps me see things more clearly and in proportion. Ideas that had seemed brilliant a couple of hours earlier were now plainly mediocre. Other, previously trivial hunches acquired a new importance. It seemed such a natural process, encouraged and inspired as it was by the sight of trees in the wind, glimpses of the horizon, or the background chatter of angry wrens. Those post-breakfast walks allowed me to plan the day's writing in detail. I never carried a notebook, tablet, or smartphone with me. If a new idea was strong enough to survive, it could wait to be jotted down when I was back indoors. On my walks, Charles Darwin often pops into my mind. Darwin was a firm believer in the intellectual and physical benefits of a good walk. I had read, or been told, that he had done just what we had done. In 1842, Darwin acquired Down House in Kent, which would be his home for the next half-century, and in which he wrote on the origin of species. Soon after he moved in, he laid out a series of looped paths through nearby woodland, walking and thinking paths for keeping himself fit — he was something of a hypochondriac — and to help him work through the scientific problems with which he was currently grappling. These wooded paths, which he named the Sand Walk, played their part in shaping ideas that would change the course of Western thought. As I took my own walks, it occurred to me that the paths themselves were part of the story of how these ideas saw the light of day. The paths were part of the process of creation and discovery. They didn't just happen. Darwin had known from the outset why he had wanted them laid down. All of which set me thinking about how details in the landscape offer us clues about the motives, the ideals, the hopes, and the fears of people who, over the centuries and millennia, have engaged with it. I wanted to get away from the obvious, the usual, and often mechanistic links between causes and effects. Why rivers were straightened or field boundaries curved, why railways, ports and harbours developed in certain places. These things are essential, but now I wanted to move on. I was looking for something much less specific than an economic or practical motive or driver, to use a useful current term. Maybe I could find some evidence for historical frustration, pride, anger, or even for admiration, love, or respect. Perhaps this was all impractical and overambitious. I did at least know what I had to do next: to head south to Kent and Down House. I have admired Darwin ever since encountering his work when studying botany and zoology in my final years at school in the early 1960s. Indeed, Darwin's writing was a major reason why I lost my tenuous hold on religion and became a lifelong secularist and rationalist. Following him, I try to see the wonders of nature, geology and chemistry, physics and astronomy for what they really are, unclouded by theological myth. And the more we discover, the more wonderful they become. The myths are no longer needed. Nothing is more transcendent than knowledge. My keenness to see Down House was more than a fan's dream. The Pryors and the Darwins were already related through the great man's wife, Emma Wedgwood, and then, 5 years before I was born, my Uncle Mark married Darwin's great-granddaughter, Sophie Raverat. On reflection, I think it must have been Uncle Mark who first told me about Darwin's long walks at Down House. Sometimes we would visit Sophie's mother, the artist Gwen Raverat, in her Cambridge house alongside the River Cam, just upstream of Queen's College, in what was once the separate village of Newnham. I have memories of hurtling.